This is Suzanne Wagner, and I'm doing a chapter in the book. This one is called Traditions, the Past, the Process of Acceptance, and Becoming Whole. This morning, I am listening to my favorite Gurmukhi mantra, Japji, by Sna Tum Kaur. It's a woman, amazing woman. I listened to it with great love and reverence to the beautiful voice of this angelic woman, clearly, cleanly attuned to the powerful tools and mantras of the Kundalini Yoga tradition. As she comes to the end of this mantra, I stop everything I am doing and sit with my eyes closed and my hands in a namaste position. I can feel the gurus who have sat and repeated this mantra for the past 1,000 years with me. I remember being back in the Golden Temple in Amritsar in India and feeling into the magic that had been woven by countless souls seeking enlightenment and the fervent repetition of this mantra to transcend the suffering of their own lives. All spiritual tools are designed to lift up the souls that are attuned to the subtle frequencies that allow them to awaken to certain frequencies. Such things allow us to feel something calling to us and to our higher self. I believe that great things can come from terrible challenges in life. I look at all those that I have admired in my life, and what I see are people that did not have things handed to them. Quite the opposite. They had to fight and claw through tremendous density to reach their goal, but that goal became the divine light of hope because something touched them, and in that moment, everything shifted. In those moments, regardless of circumstances, they knew the path for them. They were inspired to step onto that path, even when it seemed that such a goal was impossible and out of their reach. In a flash of divine inspiration, a situation, event, or circumstance ignited something familiar within their soul, and they remembered who and what they are. In such a moment of divine intervention, it seemed that failure is not an option or even a possibility. It is if we are touched by the spear of destiny, and all actions and choices from that point forward are directed towards that one goal. And that was the yearning of that heart's awakening to a higher truth of who we are, and for that moment, we remember. That is when everything changes. While talent must have seeds within the psyche, and we must have hidden memories of past lives that have gotten us to this moment, we still need that spark to catapult us into the direction that is our path and the new empowerment that has been awakened. I remember a psychologist in Berlin that was studying dancers, marathon runners, professional athletes, and how he wanted to understand their mental patterns that allowed them to become unique and to stand up to levels of excellence that such things require from a person. I remember hearing many shocking stories from others about terrible abuse, emotional trauma, poverty, and suffering that they all endured. They all seemed to have learned to fight for themselves, and they learned to stand up and follow their dream because that dream showed them the way out. Because of those terrible moments in their lives, they had a type of willpower to endure through situations that would collapse others. They never gave up. They never stopped trying to grow and learn. They never stopped questioning and seeking to explore realms of nuance that most will live an entire life and never discover. Intuitively, they knew the answers were in the small pieces that cause good people to do bad things. When it came to me, I did not feel like them, or so I thought. I had instead created my own reality, a bubble, that while it was not completely true, it gave me the fuel and determination to strive for greatness and to keep going. As I went on and on about how while my father did not support dance and the ballet world, nor did he understand it, and how, yes, it was sad that he did not want in any way to dive into things that were so terribly important to me, I felt I had my mother for my support and cheerleader. At the end of my spiel, I remember the psychologist saying to me, Suzanne, you either had the best and most perfect parents in the world, or you have created the strongest fantasy bond I have ever seen. You have created a picture that you have placed over them in order to cope and keep going because no person's family is perfect. And in my naive way, I thought inside my head, yes, I had the most perfect family. Aren't I lucky? That was the moment that the thought of another began to unravel my own illusions. It is amazing to me how one phrase from a person can alter one's perception entirely. This thought kept scratching in my mind, and I could hear my thought that proudly defined my fantasy as a fact. But the psychologist's thought was like a virus that was sweeping into the cells of my body, infecting them with doubt and making even my ego question the truth of my own statement. It started to break it down. I started to break it down in my mind as honestly as an 18-year-old could. I thought, okay, my dad was gone a lot. Honestly, he seemed gone most of the time. In fact, I started to realize that from the time I was about 4 years old until I was 8, my father was working and going to school to get his master's degree in business. When he came home, it was like God walking in the door. He was Moses, gone for 40 days and 40 nights. He was so often gone, I could not remember most times that normal families would be doing things together. Once he got that master's degree, he could be gone for months at a time, and we never knew where he was. My father worked his whole life for Texas Instruments, and everything he did was hush, hush. Until I was in Berlin, I never really knew what he did. I thought he made those cool calculators by Texas Instruments that he was always bringing home that could do a lot of complex math, calculus, and trigonometry. It made me feel very special to walk into math classes with my dad's calculator. For years, I continued my recollections from a more honest perspective about my childhood. I remember thinking, well, my mom did have 5 nervous breakdowns and was multiple times suicidal. And when I was 4 years old, I did put all the pills down the toilet in the house. And I remember taking the guns out of the house and hiding them in a pile of brush down by the creek and hiding the bullets as well. My mind stated factually, my sister was always gone. When my mother would break down and start sobbing, crying hysterically, and wanted to die, Mary Kay left the house, and I was the only one left to deal with my mother. I thought from a more mature position with sudden realization, that was pretty fucked up. Slowly, the fantasy bond that I had created as a smokescreen for my family dynamic began to shatter into pieces. The truth started falling into place, replacing the fantasy with some hard realities. I could see that I was my mother's therapist. I was her protector. I had decided, because I had no one to help me, that my value was in what I could give to others. In shock, I realized that such a position was unhealthy to put any child into, and that I had grown up too fast, out of necessity. And I also realized that in my home, my personal feelings, wants, and desires never mattered. Because my father was off saving the world, my mother was an abused child of an alcoholic parents and who had emotionally and physically abused her. She was a frozen child herself, and so I ended up being her parent in this life. I always knew I would never have children in this life, and though I did not know I was infertile until I was 38 years old, I was not in the least bit surprised or saddened by that news. I knew that being a mother was not my path in this one. I began to realize that the only place that I got to express what I wanted, what I needed, and what I felt was in a ballet studio. It was the one place where I could be me. In a ballet studio, I could feel everything I wanted to feel rather than only use my insightful and intuitive intellect to stabilize my mother's chaos and emotional instability. I could see how my mother's dysfunction was also a great gift. I was forever looking at her mind and how it worked. I had learned how to pull her off cliffs of wanting to die, and I knew her pattern better than she knew herself. She was my first study in complex character. I would spend hours watching her intently. the frantic motions of her hands trying to let go of the constant anxiety she felt, the fearful eyes that sought acceptance when she was acting insane, the attempts to act normal when she never really felt normal. She taught me that all people have light and dark within. They all have good and bad, fighting, an endless battle for dominance, and that everyone at times fell into the traps of illusion, despair, distortion, fabrication, justification, and depression. They did that because the mind could not comprehend a path out of the loops that the life had mapped as a part of their karma to uncover, learn from, and hopefully eventually escape. She had taught me that good people will fail often. She taught me that darkness does not last forever. She showed me that spirits protect those that are having nervous breakdowns and that we are never without support or help. When she was having a nervous breakdown, it was actually a breakdown of the ego. Her mind could not contain the emotional conflict and pain of her childhood. In moments, that wounded child would take control over her, often when my father would be gone, running in terror from someone coming to hurt her, but running when there was nowhere to go. I remembered the day that she took too many Librium, a drug used back in the old days for anxiety. I remember her going to her bedroom, locking the door, and not coming out. I knew something was wrong. I would bang on the door, asking her to please open the door, but there was no response. I would bang on that door, crying for hours until she would finally open the door. I asked why she did not open the door sooner, and in her dazed and drugged reality, she would say, "Oh, I could hear you, but I could not move my body and I could not respond or speak. It was like I was frozen on the bed, unable to move, speak, or function." Then she would wander off, not concerned in the least about my feelings, trauma, terror, or despair. When she took me to that first ballet performance when I was 5 years old, everything changed. Watching Bruce Marks and Tony Lander dance the Morris Pavane for the first time, I was free. When I watched them dance, I was not scared anymore. It was the first time that I could remember not being scared or concerned about the safety of my mother. In those brief moments, I was on that stage dancing with them, completely free, expressing everything and every emotion in front of everyone. In my reality, no one cared about my feelings because everyone else's was much more important and they were in much more pain than me. In that moment, the 5-year-old inside me had a flash of realization. I understood that in my core, I'm a completely happy person. I did like myself. I did think that I was amazing. I did know that there was something special in me, and seeing Bruce and Tony dance, I understood that I had more to offer than in what I could give to others. In that moment, that 5-year-old inside of me grabbed that lifeline that was offered. She realized that there was a place that all her feelings could not just be expressed, but applauded and accepted. She recognized that while it would take a lot of work, inside she could feel that it was already so. Being in an audience, I was sitting in the audience, but also dancing on that stage. I was young and I was ancient and wise. The doorway of the theater opened and gave me a life jacket, and I leapt to take it, and I was never going to let go. Ballet was going to save me. It was going to become my emotional parents that I never had. While I would trust some that would not deserve my devotion and dedication, there were others that I would find that were more like me, and those that would become my spiritual family forever. I began to understand that while I was damaged by circumstances in my childhood, I could also see that though I could feel the suffering of others, I understood that suffering was a choice. I could see that I was not like most other people in that situation, did not define who I was. Somewhere inside of me, I did know who I was. In that performance, that 5-year-old knew it, owned it, and allowed the truth to become the guiding force in our life. I compliment my inner child a lot. She is amazingly wise. She is fearless and knows how someone chooses to experience a situation where their mind is blocked and limiting their expressions of magic in this life. She observes the choices of others and has learned to love them, but knows that she does not need to follow them. My inner 5-year-old is one of my greatest allies. She is still connected to something that is divine, that all children can see and experience as oneness. She is willing to risk in ways that my human self will want to hesitate and collapse. She has never lost her connection to higher forces. She knows that she is worthy. She does not need others to see her. And she will always do what is right over what the telepathic agreements of any situation are. She does not sell out. She will not let others say she is unworthy. She recognizes that most human adults have lost their connection with the divine and should not be trusted. She seeks to explore wonders that fascinate her and does not need others to understand, follow, or approve. Together, we are a force to be reckoned with. She has taught me that while we were in a fantasy, in order to survive many terrible emotional traumas from our childhood, that we did have perfect parents. They were perfect to allow us to become who we are now. I know that both of us would all do it again, exactly the same, because of what we know and how we have become someone that we like, that has great honor, flexibility, compassion, concern, talents, tools, willingness, beauty, and the ability to see the beauty in every soul's path, even if those paths are not ours to walk in this lifetime. Wholeness comes from accepting our past, embracing fully this precious moment, and being willing to work hard to become something even better.